Welcome back to the Pursuit Podcast, where we talk about all the innovation happening across the legal tech landscape. I am your host, Chris Albrecht with Pursuit, and I am thrilled today to be chatting with Maui Guevero. He's the senior manager for the legal advisory team here at Pursuit. First off, hello, Maui. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Let's first, what does the legal advisory team do at Pursuit?
Sure. So at a high level, we're essentially the subject matter expertise side of the house. So as you can imagine, as our clients are navigating outside counsel management and engaging their external vendors, there are a lot of different strategic, consultative, or advisory services that they're needing alongside the platform that is Pursuit and now Apereo. And so we've essentially developed a team to provide those services, provide those insights, and that expert advice to our clients' legal departments and legal leadership to make sure that they are fully realizing the value that they can have in Pursuit and just more broadly understand what the best practices are in the industry.
What we were talking about is how communication and the role of communication in the sort of the state of the client and firm relationship, right? And you were able to sort of tell the story about a particular moment back when you were at a top 5 AM law firm, and the role communication played in that. But before we get into that, I just want to, from your opinion, as you are sort of out there talking, you've been on both sides of the equation and you're talking with customers and clients, right? Like, what do you think the state of the client-firm relationship is today?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think to no surprise to everybody, and I'm sure many would agree, that the current client-firm relationship is oftentimes in tension. So what I mean by that is, firms are still needed and they are valuable partners for legal departments and many of our corporate clients today. But one of the levers for profitability for law firms is being able to charge their clients something that is equivalent to the value of those legal services that are being provided. And really, the main lever that's been utilized for that has essentially been hourly rates. And so that tension has always existed and continues to exist and become kind of the primary focus between these firm relationships. So it always boils down to a matter of, yes, we could use their help. Yes, we want to use their help. Yes, they are the experts. But is that equivalent to what we may potentially be paying out and kind of the cost of these services that are happening? And so that tension always underlies the relationship. A lot of, we have firms and clients that do a really good job with managing all the other components and factors. But at the end of the day, it comes back to how much are we paying them and is the value of what we're paying them worthwhile? And so that's very hard muscle memory to get out of many of our clients and law firms' minds, particularly when they start to engage more broadly beyond kind of the individual matters that they're doing.
Right. So it's sort of the old saw is that law firms are charging every year, new rates. They go up, and it just seems to be this never-ending spiral. We've had other pieces where we're talking about, some firms charging $1,000 for a first-year associate, an hour, right? What I'm wondering is, because you've been involved on the pricing side with firms, what's something people might not realize about what goes into pricing firm rates?
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes what people may overlook is just how bespoke law firms can be when it comes to rate setting, right? So you may hear the term rack rate or standard rate and the discount that we are providing you, but rates are only a singular component of the financial relationship that you can have with law firms. And so they can really take a bespoke approach in how they're actually engaging with you from a rate perspective and just more broadly around the whole kind of financial package that they're presenting in terms of the engagement that you have with them. And so, that's kind of the end of the component. I want to touch back a little bit at the beginning. When the firms also set these rates, oftentimes there are a lot of different factors that they consider. And so from them, it's a very business-driven decision oftentimes of how they set those rates, right? Like, is our utilization high? So are we starving for work or are we actually overworked? And so if they're overworked, they might raise their rates a little bit higher. So is the demand higher or demand lower? They look at it from a practice area perspective, from a currency perspective, from a jurisdictional perspective. So there's all these things that they bake into how they set rates. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's always bottom line for them, right? Like year over year, what we've seen is that firm profitability has increased, profits per equity partners have increased, and so they are just like any other business trying to optimize and maximize that. And so part of that, right, is making sure that they can maintain their book of business and that it continues into the next year. So they're never going to raise their rates or put forward a rate or agree on a rate with you that may potentially put that relationship in jeopardy. They're always going to be willing to work with you. And so that is a very overlooked factor. Oftentimes people can feel like, oh, I don't have the wallet share to demand this from my firms. But more likely than not, if you start that conversation, if you open that line of communication, they're going to come to the table and actually talk to you about how they can craft something that fits your needs and also fits kind of the internal considerations that they have. And it's not really your job to understand all that internal considerations. It's your job to communicate your own priorities and then really have that open dialogue and that open space to make those make kind of rate changes that make sense for you.
So let's talk about that with the open dialogue, right? Because one of the things you wrote about was a time when you were at this firm and, there was tension and pushback and there was concern about the client who felt, if I recall correctly, like, everything was just about the hour, everything was just about rates. And what you talked about was, this sounds so basic, but I think it's so basic that it's something people sort of forget, was just the idea of over communicating or just coming into a mindset with more communication. So what did you learn from that? Tell us a little bit about that experience, what you learned from it and what other people can sort of take from that.
Yeah, I think the key learning and the key lesson there wasn't so much the volume or the amount that you're communicating or what over your, how much or how long or who is communicating it. It's really the content. And fundamentally, the mismatch in the communication today, even for those firms and clients that may talk very often and on a routine recurring basis, what most of them will miss is presenting the perspective of why you are making those requests or why these changes have to happen or why you want the firm or you client to come on this journey with me. So it can oftentimes be very one-sided where you are so focused on the end result, like driving rates down or pushing rates up for your clients, that you don't take them on a journey of how you even got there, right? I think our clients who are most effective at mitigating these cost increases and getting really good engagement and financial structures with their firms are the ones that come to the table and say, hey, here are our priorities for this year. Here's what we're hoping to achieve with our external counsel partners. Our thinking is we can get there doing ABCD. We're going to establish a panel. We're going to get aggressive rates on the panel. We are going to start to introduce volume discounts, but we're also committed to introducing alternative fee arrangements like fixed fees so that you can also meet your bottom line. So can you help us partner with us to meet our internal targets and our internal goals? That's the missing piece. I think a lot of clients really just get focused on, we're capping you at 10%. And the firm is coming at it from a place of almost being attacked, of like, oh, wow, they don't value our work. They don't see us as a true partner. We don't really understand the feedback beyond this. We're providing more value than just this rate. And so a lot of that dynamic is lost when you don't take them on a journey and kind of have those conversations with them. And I think that was one of the most important lessons that I learned over and over again while I was at a law firm and now again with clients, is that when you have those conversations, you can have more targeted arrangements, more targeted engagements. It's something that ends up being a win-win rather than something where you are trying to, kind of just get around or get above the counterparty that you're engaging, whether that's the firm or the client.
So let's dive a little bit deeper into that, right? Which is just the idea you had mentioned just a second ago around like fixed fees. What do you think, how are you seeing those sort of evolve? And then from that, like, how do you think they're evolving sort of the communication between clients and firms?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things that alternative fee arrangements and value-based billing really, really do well and essentially enable between clients and firms. One of the first thing is that they don't work if matters are poorly scoped. right? So if clients don't have a good understanding of the work and firms don't have a good understanding of the work, you essentially don't arrive at an effective or optimized alternative fee arrangement or value-based billing arrangement. And so one of the fundamental things that clients have to understand, and firms know this well, but clients not so much, is that you have to have a good understanding of the work. And so what it does is it causes that discipline to become ingrained in how in-house attorneys think about their matters. So they don't just throw it up against the wall or kind of throw it out to the external partners and forget about it until the bill comes. They can't do that anymore with AFAs. They have to take a little bit more discipline, a little bit more time. They have to collaborate more with their law firms, particularly if it's a competitive engagement. It becomes a very iterative process where the client may push out an initial set of assumptions. All the firms that bid will counter with their assumptions. Then you take, a very collaborative approach across those firms that have bid to maybe agree on a new framework or like a final kind of scope for the work that you're doing and then bid based off that. So it continues to basically create a situation where you are forced to have these conversations and have these deeper relationships with your law firm. And that may not be the case on an hourly basis. It's very easy to hand it off to your firms, forget about it till the bill comes or when you get updates from them. Here, it really forces you to be more proactive. It forces you to really engage with your law firms, understand how they think about the work, how you think about the work, understand where the value lies when they're pricing it. And so that can be a really important component to making sure that it's successful for you and for the firm.
Of course, sort of the specter hanging over this, right? All of this right now, right, is AI, artificial intelligence, right? And how that's going to shift, especially when you think about hourly billing models as AI can come in and, hoover through a contract really quick, and or update NDA templates, right? Like there is just some rote work that firms used to be able to charge more for on an hourly basis, and now they're not. So how do you see AI impacting the relationship between clients and firms?
Yeah, I think it's forcing currently, it's already forcing both law firms and clients to redefine what legal work is truly valuable or has high value, high impact. Because AI is quickly being able to subsume and essentially do some of that lower value, lower complexity capabilities, right? It was just a couple months ago where we said, oh, it's not good enough, it's not good enough. Now it's just continuing to get better and better and better to the point where I don't think there's anybody out there that's now denying the fact that this is going to eat into a lot of the work and pretty much like 10x the leverage of work that current headcount is able to do. And so I think that is creating a situation where AI can both be an opportunity and a threat to the law firm and the clients, depending on how they start to think about it. Right, from the client perspective, I think one of the most interesting things that I've seen happen is as they're using these AI tools more internally within their company, getting access to some of this, tooling and some of the software and some of the technology, the training, it becomes more widely accepted. They are also getting more informed as to what the capabilities exactly are. And so it used to be where everyone kind of didn't know what AI was capable of, and you would ask your firm a question around how they're going to use AI and how is it going to help their work, but you didn't really have a frame of reference whenever the firm would respond back of, oh yeah, we're using it and it's doing this and that in our efficiencies. I think that's not the case for many companies today. Customers and clients and corporate departments now have a really good benchmark because they've played with the tools themselves and understand the limitations and understand what it can do. So when they go to the firms, they're more informed, right? The conversations, I think, are just more informed. And so that's really forcing them to dive into, hey, where does the value lie here? Because it's no longer the amount of work and time that this is going to take. Because I know I can review these documents through AI and get myself as the human in the loop, do the second pass or the QA, and that'll take me 3 hours, right? But I'm relying on you for your expertise, your experience, your years that this AI model cannot replicate. So how do we value that, right? Because a component of the initial review is probably going to be AI, but that's not what's the most valuable to me. What's the most valuable to me is your years of experience and do we now distill that when it's no longer you doing 10 hours of work, it's potentially an AI, collaborating or creating an initial pass and then them reviewing it. And that's the additional layer that, that human in the loop is what's valuable. And so that I think is one of the more interesting things happening right now that's impacting the client firm relationships, is that clients are coming at it from a place that they've also played with it. They have a better understanding of it. The firms aren't necessarily the only ones that have a monopoly on that information and use now. And so it's a more informed conversation between the two parties.
And just because I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, that's just on the work side of it, right? But as someone who has done pricing and, we talk about procurement, how do you see sort of AI shaping that side of the business?
Yeah, that's just on the work and the services being offered. But you're right, it's getting plugged into everything, right? I mean, the new hot thing is agentic AI. So actually helping it do the processes, the infrastructure, and everything else around the work that you are doing. So that's even the additional step, right? So in these competitive, Pursuit does competitive auctions, for example, and we have competitive proposals. So how is that going to change? How is the engagement between your firms? Now that we have this pricing data and information in our marketplace, having AI being able to go in and analyze that, how is that going to change the marketplace when everybody has the same information almost? And so you really have to understand the value and start thinking about pricing in different ways. So there's so many interesting and different things that's developing right now. I think what I would say has, the folks that are further along are the ones that are trying things and failing and iterating and evolving and changing. They're not getting stuck at the point of, oh, AI can't do this, move on. They're like, okay, AI can do this, what else can it do? Or how can it help me then? If it can't do the full thing, what components is it able to service and adapt towards? And we're seeing more and more use cases that are not kind of directly the initial instinct or gut instinct of what we might think AI is going to do, like contract reviews or due diligence and things like that. We're seeing even more interesting use cases. We have clients that use it for their accessibility capabilities, firms that use it for their accessibility capabilities, essentially being able to read and translate things on a screen multimodally. So having text to speech and those types of things that are evolving at an even more rapid pace because of AI. They can now describe pictures before. So lots of interesting different things that are being utilized outside of actually the pure legal work that's happening.
As we close out here, I want to talk to you just real quick. I want to, reference the PERSUIT Exchange event that happened a couple months back, right? You led a really great panel and it's Chatham House rules, so I can't say who was there. But we could talk about sort of the content that was covered. And you had a really great panel where you brought together sort of firms and clients on the same stage. Right. And I'm wondering if there was something from the talks that those people had on stage that really surprised you, or really you're still thinking about sort of a couple months in.
Yeah. I mean, not surprising, but I think everybody needed to hear it. But the frustrations were pretty similar on both sides. Everyone is willing to listen, but nobody is willing to talk. So funny enough, right? The firms are, hey, we're open to feedback. We'd love to get more data. We'd love to be more collaborative with you. And then the clients on the flip side is, hey, we would love for you to come to us more proactively with your own thoughts and strategies and philosophies around how to improve our relationship. We'd love for you to be more commercially attuned and come with proposals that really is tailored to us as clients. But then on the flip side, none of the clients were really saying or committing to, yeah, we are committed to going to talk to our firms and giving them feedback and giving them or setting expectations with them and talking to them more broadly around the relationship. And then the firms also weren't committing to, oh yeah, we'd love to come to our clients proactively with a very commercially attuned proposal, or engage them proactively on rates and fee arrangements and our relationship. So that was I think the unspoken thing that was happening is everyone is very open and willing to listen and actually starving for that communication and feedback from the receiving perspective, but not so much from the giving perspective. So I think that is where the biggest opportunity really is for both both law firms and clients is essentially to build a muscle around being the one that reaches out, being the one that actually starts that communication and opening that dialogue, because it is rare, if ever, there's a situation where the other side doesn't want to hear it or is not open to that dialogue. And so once you create a space for it, things can move very, very quickly. Those relationships can improve. You will really start to understand, what your firm cares about, what they're looking for, and how they can tailor proposals to you.
Yeah, I think you put it up. You succinctly described it really well, I think, in your newsletter, which was just like clients are afraid to call the firms because they don't want them to think that they're sort of second guessing the firms, and then firms are afraid to call the client because they don't want to think that they don't want to give the impression that they don't have the expertise that they've been paid for, right? So you get stuck in this sort of, it's almost like middle school in a weird sort of way. You're just like, I'm not going to call, you know what I mean? And you get stuck in sort of this thing where everybody wants to talk to each other, like you said, but no one actually picks up the phone to do it. And I think that that's really unfortunate. And hopefully some people will walk away from this today thinking that they should, call your firm, call your client. See how they're doing.
I think that barrier is so much less than they think, and the initial communication doesn't have to be this big strategic philosophical thing. It can just be like, hey, I want to understand more, from a firm perspective, approaching a client. Hey, I want to understand more what your priorities are and how we can support you. Very high level, very initial, just opening the door to a conversation with a client. And client to firm, it can be as simple as, hey, here's how the relationship has been from our perspective for the last however long it's been. Here's where we're headed. How can you help us, or how can we partner towards where we're trying to head? So you can start off super high level and then get granular, right? Then talk about your fee arrangements, then talk about your secondees, talk about exposing them to new matters and how they can be integrated to like the feedback mechanisms that you have, how they can be in contact to more of your in-house attorneys. But it doesn't have to start at that granular level. You don't have to have the plan in mind when you start these conversations. What you need to do first is just open that door and actually just start that line and start that channel, so that you can start to exchange some of this information and take down some of the kind of barriers that have been in place.
And that, I think, is an excellent place to end here today. Maui Guevero, you are the Senior Manager for the Legal Advisory Team at PERSUIT. We'll put a link to your LinkedIn in the show notes so people can find you and follow up if they have any questions. But Maui, thanks so much for being a guest on the show today.
Yeah, thanks again, Chris. It was a pleasure.